Okay, so we are finally at a point where Notepad is actually getting used to exploit users. So we have finally made it. Now people are trying to hack Notepad and they are causing major issues in the industry. Here we have this article from TrendAI which is talking about this major exploit in the Windows Notepad. And mind you guys, this is Windows Notepad that comes bundled into the Windows OS. Like this is not some third party operating system or third party Notepad. Yes, Notepad++ has also been compromised and we are going to talk about it within this video. But let us try to tackle this Notepad issue first. Okay, like how can someone literally hack Notepad and then just cause issues on your computer? Like Notepad, what is this? Notepad is just a crappy editor that just opens file, right? You open anything in the Notepad, whether it is a binary, whether it is some kind of HTML, whether it is some kind of code file, it will just open it and show you what is written inside of that. That's all. It never runs or never does anything other than just showing you what is inside the file. So how is it possible that an application like Notepad is getting hacked by security vulnerabilities and it is causing major issues in the industry? And the reason is very simple, straightforward, and once you hear it, like you will be like, oh man, how could someone think of doing that, right? And yeah, I mean, this is just a proof that there is always someone who is going to think of doing that, okay? So what happened is that in the earlier versions of Notepad++, all you can do, not Notepad++, simple Notepad, all you can do is just open a file and just view the text that was inside of that file, right? But for few years, I think like 1 or 2 years, Notepad team at Windows have been shipping features like crazy. So one of the features that they shipped is that the Notepad, the normal Notepad, it will now be able to parse MD files, like markdown files, real MD files. So for those of you who don't know what is markdown file, it is simply a documentation file, okay? Markdown is a language that you use to generate documentations, okay? That's all it is. That's literally all it is. It is like HTML but for documentation, okay? And developers use it all the time. Yes, most developers don't really understand the language, but yeah, we use it all the time. And it is a very simple language, like there is no exploit in the language itself, and you will never think that MD files can cause this kind of issue. And markdown files are so common in the software development industry that no one will think that markdown files can actually like just be a gateway to this security exploit. Okay, so let me tell you what happened. So what happened is that the Notepad is now able to parse these markdown files in the final output. And in the markdown files, what you can do is you can actually place links, because every documentation will always have links from here to there, or some kind of link will be there. So markdown files will contain links. But the way Notepad implemented this thing, being able to show the links that are in the markdown file, is just so crazy. Okay, let me tell you how these links are actually written in the markdown file first. Okay, so here we have this markdown editor. This is an online editor. This is called StackEdit. So whenever you want to add a link in the documentation or a markdown file, you write something like this. Okay, you have this bracket and then you have this text. Okay, this is the text that the user will see whenever that user will actually open the markdown file and see the documentation. Okay, and then this is the closing bracket, saying that okay, the displayed text is gone or done actually. And then after that there is this parenthesis. Okay, in this parenthesis we have the actual URL. So here right now I have https dollar, or like it's just google.com. Okay, I cannot pronounce it right now, but here's the thing. Okay, this is the code that I wrote. Okay, and this is the thing that the user will see. This is the final documentation. So once I click it like this, it will actually take me to the google.com, right? What it is actually doing is this is taking this URL and simply just going there, right? But the way this is implemented in the Notepad is just crazy. Okay, so what is happening in the Notepad is that they are using a function, a Windows operating system function called shell execute exw, and then they are just passing this link or whatever this string is in that function without any validation. So what it means is that this link, if it is google.com, great, you will actually have a browser opening up and taking you to the google.com. But if it is something like this, if it is a path to the local file :/ and something like C:/ users / executable.exe, guess what? It will literally take this path Okay, it will literally take this path as it is, it will pass it in the shell execute exw, and it will just run this executable. Like, that is so crazy. Like, can you imagine that you click a link and it will run an application on your computer? This is so bad. This is literally so bad, because shell execute exw is like a master control. Okay, you are giving permission to do whatever it wants to do on your machine, so it can just run any executable, do anything it wants, and like, you will simply not know what happened. Let me tell you a bit more about shell execute. What does this actually do? Okay, so shell execute by itself is nothing important. Like, I mean, by itself it does not really do anything. Shell execute is like a gateway. Okay, think of it like a gateway. Okay, you will pass a request here with this particular string. Okay, and then this shell execute, like just say exw, will actually find the application on your system. Okay, so what happens is that you will have multiple applications. For example, you have Photoshop. Okay, you have a browser like Chrome or Safari. Okay, you have something like Notepad. Okay, you have some other thing. Okay, like just say what can be, okay, yeah, code editors, Visual Studio. Okay, Visual Studio, or maybe Xcode. Okay, these kind of application you have. Okay, and what this shell execute does is that it will take your string. Okay, it will take your string and it will find out the protocol that the string contains. So when you are trying to go to a web URL, you have something like HTTPS, right? So for example, like just write HTTPS or HTTP and then double slash. Okay, so this is a protocol. It will take this protocol and it will ask within itself that, okay, what kind of programs can handle this protocol. We will see that, okay, web browser can handle it, so it will take this protocol and it will pass to one of the web browser that you have in your system. So whatever is your default web browser. So for all of these, you can have multiple applications. You can have Photoshop, you can have GIMP, you can have some other kind of photo editor, and whatever is default, that will be picked. So for browsers, suppose I have set my Chrome as a default. You all have seen that pop-up where Chrome is telling you to just make it or set it as a default, just like what we can see here. Okay, this is a really good thing. So we have this set as default button right here on my screen. If I click on it, what it will do is that it will set Chrome as the default browser for whenever an HTTP request or HTTP string will come to the shell execute. So shell execute will use Chrome browser at that point, if I set it as default, to actually just use this string. It will simply take my browser, pass the HTTP string, and then the browser will open it. Okay, that's how the shell execute works. Shell execute is just like an API gateway. That's pretty much it. But here's the thing, shell execute have access to all the programs, like even the ones that you did not like install. Okay, the ones that actually stays within the operating system itself. For example, we have this protocol called MS App Installer. This is crazy. Okay, so MS, that is Microsoft App Installer. Okay, colon double slash, and then you have this source, that is the URL of the file that you want to install or something. So what this protocol does is that like a hacker, okay, a hacker could literally just write this thing, okay, with the URL of the file that they have for malicious work, and if this string is passed in the shell execute, okay, so what it will do is it will literally take this protocol. It will actually use a pre-built or a pre-installed utility in the Windows operating system. It will just download whatever file is on this URL. It will literally install it and run it with your permissions on your machine. This is crazy. Okay, this is crazy. The fact that Notepad was not checking for this kind of validation is just crazy. This is a huge security flaw. Now, yes, I mean, in 2024, the support for MS installer protocol was removed from the shell execute. So yeah, it could not actually do this at this point, but still it was 2024, okay, and this vulnerability was introduced in 2025. So if this was not done in 2024, if it was not removed for the support in 2024, this would have been a very big like security flaw. A lot could happen. But right now, what will happen, right? What is the practical use of this security flaw right now? Okay, so right now, what will happen is that okay, a person will say to the user that, hey, here is the GitHub for our documentation. Okay, and this is a very common thing for developers to actually go to the GitHub and download the documentation for some kind of software or something like that. Okay, and in that thing, okay, when you are downloading the documentation, somewhere deep in the nested folders, okay, they will actually have some kind of executable, okay, .exe somewhere here, okay, and this will be a malicious application. They will just like you have just downloaded this thing along with documentation, and somewhere, okay, one of these pages, the first page probably will have a link, okay, to more information. Probably once you click on this link, it will simply actually run this thing, run this exe, and this is the malicious or the security or basically the payload that the hacker want you to install or run on your machine. And just by clicking on a link, now you are done. Okay, if it is a ransomware, it will just lock all your things, everything in your computer, and it's a mess. It's just done. Now you are done completely, right? Security researchers outside of Microsoft or inside the Microsoft found this thing in the security audit and all that stuff. So they were able to fix this security flaw, but yeah, I mean, this could have been a really big flaw. It would definitely have caused a major havoc if this thing was actually still supported, the MS installer. The hacker will not even need to actually include any exe in the documentation or anything. Just a single click would be enough to take over your computer. But still, this security flaw was actually detected very early. Okay, so nothing bad could happen at a major scale at least. Okay, but there is one more issue. The Notepad++ was also hacked, or it was actually like compromised. Okay, and the way Notepad++, which is an open source software, and Microsoft does not actually maintains the Notepad++. So this open source software, the way it was cracked or the way it was used is very scary and dangerous. Okay, because like this is individual targeting mechanism. Okay, let me tell you what happened there. That is really scary, the Notepad++ security flaw. So what happened is that just like many other open source software or many other like applications, especially the Google Chrome, the Google Chrome have this auto updater, I believe somewhere here. I cannot see it right now here, but there's an option to just allow the Chrome to auto update, right? So you enable that thing, and then the Chrome will auto update itself whenever it needs to. Okay, so something similar was implemented by the Notepad++ team. So the Notepad++ team or the contributors actually created a utility called WinGUp. WinGUp is the auto updater for Notepad++. Okay, so each time a new version of the Notepad++ is available, it will actually ask you that, hey, do you want to update the Notepad++ or not? And you will actually get option to say yes or no. And this is a pretty good thing. Like unlike Chrome, okay, the Chrome actually just updates itself automatically behind the scenes silently, but this one is actually asking you whether you want to do it or not. So that's a good one. But this entire system caused Notepad++ to be exploited very badly by hackers. So what happened is that this utility, okay, the WinGUp, the auto updater, was not secure at all. Okay, and I cannot blame the Notepad team because it's an open source software, and like they're not even getting paid to actually maintain this thing, and the entire industry uses this software. We cannot blame them for this kind of thing. Okay, they cannot hire a QA team or some security team to deal with these kind of things, right? But let me tell you what happened. So this utility, okay, what this utility does is that there will be a URL on which a new version of the Notepad will be available. Okay, so maybe there is some web provider, for example AWS or hostinger, okay, or some other kind of thing where this thing or this new version of file is actually stored, okay. And we have this URL for that file, okay. So what this does is that if you click yes, this utility will simply go ahead, use this URL, and then just fetch the binary. The binary means the final build or the new notepad version. It will just download it in the machine and it will simply install it, and that is fine because that's how most of the time these kind of things happen. But this is not supposed to be this simple, okay. You don't just download something and just install it in the machine. You have to verify, you have to make sure that the binary or the exe or the application that you downloaded is in fact the exe that you are supposed to download, okay. Like you want to make sure that something did not happen along the way while you are downloading it. Because what happens is that if you have a web provider, okay, like just say we call it web provider, okay, like this WP, web provider, okay, and this hosts the new Notepad++, the new version Notepad++, okay. So it contains the new Notepad++. You have this WinGW, or you like just call it WinGUp, okay, that is the correct name. You have this WinGUp that will actually fetch the new version of the Notepad++, and you have this machine, okay. This is the user machine, okay. So this utility, the WinGUp, will fetch this thing, and then it will actually install it in the user machine, okay. But when you are doing it, you want to make sure that no hacker, okay, let's just call it hacker here, no hacker was able to break into the system right here, in the middle, okay. We call it man in the middle hack. So right here the system was not broken, and this exe, okay, this exe was not replaced by the exe from the hacker, okay, because hackers can do this. They can replace this exe with the exe that they want, and then this new exe will be reaching to the WinGUp, and then this will be installed, okay. So you want to be able to verify that, okay, the exe that you got here is in fact this one and not this one, okay. So how do you do that? You actually use something called cryptographic integrity check, okay. So whenever something like this is happening over the internet, this man in the middle thing is very common. So you want to do some kind of signature checks, okay. What happens is this, okay, we will have this exe in the server. Okay, now first of all we have two things. We have cryptographic private and public keys, okay. We have private and public keys, and the private keys will be held by the people at Notepad++ organization, okay. Nobody else will have this private key. The public key will be present, or the public key will be actually accessible by everyone else, okay, because it is a public key. So what happens is that each time a new exe for Notepad++ is generated, or a new version of Notepad++ is generated, the people, okay, the people at Notepad organization will use a protocol, not protocol, they will use a hashing function, SHA-256, okay. They will use this function to create a hash, okay. They will just pass this exe in the function as it is, okay, and then it will actually create a hash. A hash is like a 64 character long string, that's all it is, okay. A hash will be created, and once it is created, you cannot create the original exe back from it. Like it is not in this direction. It is only one way. You can only create hash, and you cannot find out what the input was to create that hash, okay. So that all is covered in the cryptographic stuff. If you want to understand more about that, just go ahead and read it. But here's the thing, you got the hash, okay. You have this hash right now that is generated by this particular function, or you can call it a cryptographic operation, okay. And what happens is that you will sign this hash with your private key, okay. You will sign it with your private key, and you will then send it, okay. Then this entire thing, the hash and this exe, is sent along with a digital certificate from an authorized authority. So DigiCert is one of the authorized authority, okay. So a digital certificate, a hash, and basically this exe will be sent to the WinGW. Okay, so this place WinG up. So all this will be sent to WinG up. Okay, and now the WinG up will actually take this certificate, the Digi certificate. It will take out the public key. So this public key, so we can create an arrow from here to here. So we have the public key right now, and now this WinG up will take out the public key from that certificate, and it will actually use the public key to make sure that signature, okay, we signed this hash. We signed this hash with the help of a private key here. So we will use the public key to just verify the signature. So we will use the public key to verify the signature, okay, and then after verifying the signature, we will actually get the hash that is stored in the signature. So hash is stored in the signature, we get the hash, okay, and then we also have the exe, right? We have the software. So on the client side, on the WinG up side, the WinG up will actually take this exe and again use the SHA-256 function to create a hash. Okay, so it will create, like, just say hash 1. Okay, and then we actually compare these two hashes. We compare hash 1 to the given hash from the network. If these are okay, if these are same, then we know that nothing has been done with the exe. Nothing has been done. Okay, it is exactly the exe that we want, and then we go ahead and take this exe and then we install it in the user's machine like this. Okay, user machine, and guess what? This entire process was missing from the WinG up utility. Like, entire process was missing, entire, complete. So like, that's what happened. Okay, people or the hackers simply went here. They just went into the man in the middle. Okay, before the exe was reaching here, they just got here. Okay, they got here, they replaced the exe, and then the replaced exe went to the client or the WinG up software, and then that was actually installed in the user's machine. But that is not the issue. I mean, yes, it is an issue, but that is not the scary part. The scary part is that these hackers were really sophisticated. Okay, let me tell you what they did. Okay, that's the scary thing that they did. So what happened is that we have this web provider, okay, that contains the exe. Okay, what they did is that they just went ahead and they just hacked the web provider itself. Okay, now they have all the access to the web provider. So it means all the incoming HTTP requests, the IP addresses, okay, all the incoming IP addresses are now visible to these hackers. Okay, they can actually see these IP addresses. Okay, and they know that, okay, if we started replacing this exe with our own exe all the time, then this security flaw will be discovered very quickly, right? And if it is discovered very quickly, like people will know what is happening, then this security flaw will be closed soon, right? Like really quickly. So what they did is that they targeted people. Okay, they targeted high value individual people. And what happens is that whenever in a company, okay, so in a company you can have like hundreds of thousands of people working, right? So most of the time people will actually go to here, or when I say people go to here, I mean the WinG up utility on their system go to this web provider, and these hackers see that, okay, this particular IP is not the high value IP that they are targeting. So they said that okay, take this exe and just go to this user. So what they did is they just sent the correct exe. They did not send any malicious exe at this point, right? But whenever a high value person sends a request here, okay, and then they actually intercept it. Okay, then they know that, okay, a high value person have requested this exe, and at that point they literally replace the exe for this individual person that they are literally targeting at this point. And then this exe goes into their system, and then this exe gets installed into their machine. Do you see the sophistication, the level of sophistication that these people are showing here? They know that if they actually just like randomly send this exe to everyone, it will be closed very soon. So they are literally trying to target the high value people. And how they are able to find out the high value people's IP addresses, there are ways to find out things. Okay, but that is not very well specifically documented, I believe. But yeah, but they found out their IPs, and then they tracked their IPs, and then they replaced the actual Notepad exe with their malicious exe, right? Their malicious application. And like, okay, so this is how the hack was actually performed. Okay, but here's the thing, this is kind of a messy thing. This is kind of a funny thing that, okay, this exe, which is supposed to be a malicious thing, or you can also call it a virus, is actually a valid or a legit or a proper correct copy of a Bitdefender. And for those of you who don't know what is Bitdefender, it is actually an antivirus software. So what they are doing is that they are using antivirus software to carry out malicious practice on a particular computer. Okay, what they did is that they actually have this legit, okay, this is a correct copy of Bitdefender, it is not a cracked copy, and this copy is actually signed. Okay, so this is signed by DigiCert and all the authorized things. Okay, so this gets into the system of the user. Okay, and in the system of the user, this Bitdefender thing is actually checked by the operating system. Okay, and since it is signed by a proper authority, it gets installed. Okay, and what these people did is that in this copy, okay, some DLLs were replaced by the malicious code. So there are many DLLs in a particular application. So these people replaced some of the DLLs with their own DLL, which contained the malicious payload. Okay, and that is so crazy. Like, this is so crazy. Okay, so they actually so what the user right now is doing is that the user, the high value person, is actually thinking that they are installing Notepad++, but they're actually installing a copy of Bitdefender with malicious code or malicious DLL inside of it. Okay, and this Bitdefender is not called Bitdefender. It is actually renamed by hackers to something called Bluetooth service. Okay, so from user's perspective, the user is actually trying to run something like Bluetooth service, which is actually the copy of Bitdefender, which contains the very malicious DLLs. And this is a crazy thing. Okay, this is like a joke from the hacker's point. Okay, like, hacker is trying to just insert this inside joke that, hey, I'm using an antivirus to actually hack your system. Like, this is so crazy, right? But yeah, I mean, this is a scary thing, because at this point it's not a mass operation, right? It's very targeted, high profile people who were using Notepad++ were targeted, specifically targeted. So that's why it is very scary, because no one in the organization other than these people were facing this issue, right? And it actually became very hard for security people to understand where was this issue was, but still they were able to figure these things out, which is really, like, commendable. Like, this is so amazing that they were able to figure this kind of thing out, because I know I would be pulling my hair out when I'm trying to, like, see this kind of thing. This is so crazy. But now this has been fixed by the Notepad++ team. So now the WinG up, okay, this utility actually uses proper cryptographic integrity protocols or integrity processes. Okay, so it is fine right now, it is fine. But you need to understand something. Okay, open source softwares are, at the end of the day, open source softwares. Okay, nobody holds a responsibility to those softwares. People who are maintaining it are actually doing a favor to the rest of the community by creating something that is used so much in the industry. Because Notepad++, man, it is used so heavily in the industry all the time, especially in the software. And if you go to the financial companies, like, this software is used every day to write configuration files and all these kind of things. And those are very high value people who are using Notepad++ all the time. These people, the people who created Notepad++, at the end of the day, we need to understand that they are not getting paid for this thing. Okay, they don't hold a responsibility. I mean, yes, maybe a moral responsibility, but at the end of the day, they are not getting paid for it, right? The industry is using it, but they are not getting anything out of it, and so they can't afford to spend crazy amount of money on something which is open source. They can't afford to go ahead and just hire a QA team or a security team to figure out where the security flaws are. And yeah, that's just the reality of open source. And that's why it is important that whenever you're trying to download something from open source, you like understand the risks of that thing. Okay, because Notepad++ is so famous, so much used, and even after that this crazy security exploit happened. So it really becomes our responsibility to make sure that whenever we are trying to install a software which is open source, we understand that there are risks, and there will always be risks. And with that, Parshif signing off. Let's meet you in the next video.